It's back to school time. This year, Sport Clips Haircuts will send you back in style with the prize package sure to send you straight to the head of the class. Visit sportclips.com/back-to-school for your chance to win. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
Here we are. We're back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Get out a red pen and make a circle on your calendar. October 17th, 8 o'clock, Celtics at Cavaliers to open the NBA season. And in case you haven't heard, that game's going to look a little different than you might have previously expected. Go like the Kyrie Irving trade goes down last night, and it is in every way a blockbuster.
As I heard my son Mike say on First and Last this morning, sometimes the golf gods, there are no golf gods, but there are sports gods. The sports gods can give you something that is magical, and that would be on a Tuesday night in the NFL season, this game. So you have this night, NBA. This night is yours to have this matchup in Cleveland, which is going to be amazing. They meet 3 times this year, obviously the first time being the first game of the season. And then we'll see where it goes from there. The hate will be out. It will be masked by love, but it will be there nonetheless. And we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, listen, we're going to break down this trade. But let me just make my initial statement of this. Nothing has changed. That the Cleveland Cavaliers are still going to go to the NBA Finals. And the biggest question is, are they going to play the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals to get there or not?
In that perspective, I agree with you. That doesn't change in the short term. I believe the Cavaliers remain the team to beat in the Eastern Conference, right, and maybe even more so than they previously were. But it does change things, obviously, in the long run.
It absolutely does in the long run. I'm talking about the here and now. That's this whole NBA offseason, of which we were mesmerized. Every move that was made was put to the backdrop of, are you better capable of beating Golden State now? And there was nothing that was done that said that. And then this move was made. When this move was made, the thought was, okay, does this, before you even get to Golden State, does this change anything coming out of the East? And in my eyes, it does not. Cleveland still comes out of the East. As I said, will Boston play Cleveland in the Eastern Finals? But as far as the bigger question, it's also, I don't think, done anything to make us think Cleveland would be the favorite playing Golden State in the finals as well. Though Jay Crowder, he's the interesting one in all this as far as his defense is 3-and-D, as we call it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's start by throwing the question out to you. I put the Twitter poll question up immediately. I didn't even wait till I got in here this morning. The question is very simple. Which side got the better of the Kyrie Irving trade? And it's on my
tough to answer
Twitter page.
I mean, it's a base, and I get it. I get the question. You did put it up without asking me. Yeah. I thought we had decided that you would have to ask my permission, but I guess once the show is ending, all bets are off. No, you do whatever you want.
I wasn't looking at it that way, but
yeah, right, whatever.
This one just felt like a no-brainer.
But to me, I mean, it's now or in the future, because now it's Cleveland, in the future it could be Boston. So, I mean, that's a tough one to answer.
Here's why I think the answer is what you just said. My personal opinion, let's start with this. The overwhelming winner of this trade, in my opinion, is Cleveland for the following reason. Because the recent history of the NBA has been Team X has a superstar that demands a trade.
Right.
And they just get absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, you're right.
So that didn't happen here.
No, it did not.
So in that regard, if in that regard alone, Cleveland comes out of this a huge winner, it doesn't even necessarily mean they do better in the deal than Boston. But they still win. Because if you look at what Indiana got for Paul George, and you look at what all these other teams got for their great players in some cases maybe better than Kyrie Irving, look at what teams got for Carmelo Anthony, although they got a lot in Denver for Carmelo Anthony, and that's a different story. But you look at these teams that lose their superstars and never able to recover, Cleveland definitively is a winner, even if the Celtics wind up getting the better of the trade. That's my first reaction.
I'm with you there, and let's also remember one other thing for you Cavalier fans. As hard as you're going to root for your team this year, you're going to root against Brooklyn, because you get that unprotected pick, first-round pick. They had 20 wins last year, and if, in fact, LeBron does leave next year, you're going to need a big-time pick to try and start to move forward, and that could be a pretty high pick.
Well, but so that brings us to a year from now.
Right.
So, in my opinion, overall, the Celtics get the better of this deal, because I believe that one of the things that is obvious from this is the Celtics had no intention of building their future
around
financially and otherwise around Isaiah Thomas. Because if they did, there was no reason to make this deal. Trade Crowder is an incredibly valuable player.
Yes,
you just used the 3-and-D term. He has a ridiculously reasonable contract that runs another 3 seasons.
Right.
So, and they give up an unprotected, as you just pointed out, lottery pick that could very well wind up being the first pick in the draft.
A ton of assets to use for a situation like this.
And we've been waiting, and they finally do, and they use it on Kyrie Irving. So, in my opinion, if the Celtics had if there's any question in their mind about the hip of Isaiah Thomas, that's different. But I believe they didn't think that they were going to build it. They're not going to give $200 million to Isaiah Thomas. So, in that regard, I believe they actually wind up winners in this trade. They get what they really wanted in this deal.
The other side of this, as long as LeBron is on the Cavaliers, they have won this trade because they'll still be in the finals. They got back more, just as you said earlier, more than normally you're getting for a player that demands a trade. So they will win this trade as long as LeBron's on the team. And then, depending on what that first pick is for Brooklyn and what kind of player you get to build for regardless, you're building for your time after LeBron. You're playing with LeBron right now to be in the championship. But that's only for a couple of more years. That's if he stays in Cleveland. It's still for a few more years. So you get a first-round pick to mature over that time as well to kind of keep rolling when LeBron is gone.
They did the impossible, Mike. They did both.
They did.
We were talking about, do you try and win now or do you build for the future with this asset? And they did both.
Agree.
So that's why I phrased the question the way I did. I believe both teams win. I believe both teams did well last night. I think both teams are happy this morning. So the question is, which side do you think got the better of the deal? I think it's a fascinating question because you can have a trade is not meant for one side to fleece the other.
Right.
Trades, generally speaking,
you want to get a win-win,
are meant because both sides want to do it. And in this case, both sides were motivated for whatever reason they did. I think both teams wind up coming out of this well. Who got the better of it? You can cast your vote on Twitter.
Yeah, I guess if I were to answer that question, I would answer it in the now and say Cleveland, because I'll just look to next year, because this has a lot of ancillary parts to it. And the fact for Boston, you have Gordon Hayward, who's 27. You have Kyrie Irving, who's 25. You're building around your last couple of lottery picks in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who the Celtics did not want to give up. Cleveland wanted Jason Tatum, and Boston was doing everything in the world not to give him up. So they got those couple of young pieces, the young Kyrie Irving, the Gordon Hayward coming in. So they're looking good down the road, no doubt about it.
Well, they're going to require name tags when they show up for their first practice. Yeah. Do you know how many Celtics remain from last year's roster? Bear in mind, they were the number 1 seed in their conference, and they made the conference final. Now, that felt like a mirage the entire time, but the facts remain. They were the number 1 seed in their conference, and they made the conference final. Do you know how many of them are left on that team?
I'm going to guess 4.
4 is exactly right.
I knew what it was.
So you saw the stat already.
Yeah, I did.
It's Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Terry Rozier are the only Celtics remaining. Not from 3 years ago, not from 30 years ago, but from 3 months ago. There are only 4 guys left on a team that finished first in the conference and made it to a conference final, and yet no one can argue that they did the wrong thing by breaking up what they had and starting it over. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. We've got Jeff Goodman in here in about 20 minutes with his perspective on the deal. Our Kevin Pelton, ESPN insider, grades the trade as follows. He gives the Cavaliers an A. He gives the Celtics a C.
Yes, he does.
Here's the only reason I could see to give the Celtics a C, and that is if they don't have some idea that Kyrie Irving wants to be there long term. Kyrie Irving has, as everybody knows, because we've been following this since we knew he wanted out of Cleveland, has 2 years left on his contract. Right. If they lose him in 2 years, then they definitively lose this trade, if only because of the draft pick they gave up. But I have to believe in a world where Magic Johnson can get accused of tampering, but we all know that all these conversations take place behind the scenes. Yes, they do. They know that Kyrie is willing to stay there long term. So long as he does, they didn't want to build around Isaiah Thomas.
No.
So X him out. However good you think he is, Kyrie Irving is better, and X him out. So they basically traded Crowder, who's a very good player.
Yes, Crowder. Don't get Crowder lost in this trade.
Not at all.
On what he was in Boston and what he can do in Cleveland.
Yes, I think he's a really good player. But they traded him and an unprotected first-round pick that is most likely going to be a very, very high pick
for
Kyrie Irving.
Right.
I think that's a good deal. I mean, that's how good Kyrie Irving is.
So let's both try now and have a little fun, and let's mention the third player that was in this deal and try and get his name right.
Well, I believe it's Ante Zizic.
Now, I've heard Ante Zizic. So what Hembo and I did before the show is he pulled up a broadcast.
Okay.
And it was pronounced 3 different ways in said same broadcast. So like Wojnarowski.
Right.
Wojnarowski. It's Wojnarowski.
We'll just call this guy the Ziz.
Yeah, Ante Zizic, who played, was it in Croatia last year? And, oh, by the way, of the 3 players traded, he was the highest draft pick. He was the highest pick of the 3. He was taken 23rd by the Celtics in 2016. Crowder was taken 34th, ironically, by Cleveland in 2012. And in 2011, Isaiah Thomas was taken 60th. He was the last pick in the draft in 2011. Any guess who the first pick in the draft was that year?
It was Kyrie Irving.
It was Kyrie Irving. So Zizic.
Ante Zizic. I was told Zizic, and then I was trying to write it down phonetically.
I said the same thing to Hembo. I don't know what's phonetic for Ziz.
How do you? I would challenge.
Spell Ziz.
Tweet at us.
Yeah, Ziz.
At us. How would you? If his name is indeed pronounced Zizic.
Okay, and it's spelled Zizic, and it's pronounced either Zizic or Zizic or something, but how do you phonetically spell Ziz?
Yeah, how would you write that down? How would you spell it in such a way that when you looked at it, you would immediately have it? I don't know. I tried it here, and I just wrote it as it's spelled.
I was you a half hour before that, because I first thing I did is I come in and I had 2 names for Hembo to get for me. And one of them was Zizic or Zizic, however, and I had my pen ready to go, okay, I do everything phonetically.
Right.
And he went, Zizic, and I went, what the hell did you just say?
That's exactly what it is.
I said, what am I supposed to do with that?
You're not getting us any closer. Well, one way or another, he and Jay Crowder and a first-round pick from the Nets and Isaiah Thomas are on their way to Cleveland for Kyrie Irving. Let's go at the mics, brought to you by Dove Men Plus Care. Did you know that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? If you're heading to the gym right now, you should pick some up on your way. Let's listen along the way to Jeff Van Gundy with his thoughts on the trade.
Well, I think Cleveland did an outstanding job after everyone knew Kyrie Irving wanted to be traded, to be able to get a great point guard in Isaiah Thomas, someone who can complement LeBron James, a very good 3-4 man in Jay Crowder on a great contract, and then that first rounder from next year. I think it puts him in great position to retain LeBron James, as well as they'll have a lot of options if James decides to go someplace else. So I thought Cleveland did a terrific job.
Do you know who needs to run silent, run deep today?
Yeah.
The Pacers.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. So that's what Cleveland got for Kyrie, and this is what we got for Paul George.
Yeah, 2 years of Kyrie versus 1 year of Paul George. I mean, it is. That's why the Cavaliers get an A, because the bar was set so low.
Yep.
And bear in mind, they're going to get Dwayne Wade. Okay, let's stop talking about this as a possibility. Mm-hmm. This is no longer if; it is when.
Right.
The Bulls will buy out Dwayne Wade. There is no conceivable reason from their perspective or his for him to play an entire year in Chicago on what might be the worst team in the NBA. So Dwayne Wade is going to be in Cleveland. So now you got LeBron, you got Kevin Love. The question is, what exactly is Isaiah Thomas at this point with the hip? How bad is that injury?
Right.
What do you know?
Brad Stevens, his coach, had said there was question whether he would be ready for the start of training camp. It was a labrum in his hip. They opted for no surgery. It was, in game 2 against the Cavaliers when he heard it.
They were down 60 at the time.
This is one of those where you opt for no surgery and you try and heal it, and then you pray to God after that time that it's supposed to heal, that you don't say, we were wrong and now you need surgery, because then you're in a whole lot of trouble. So there is question on whether he'll be ready for training camp or not. So we'll see.
I believe I think I'm going to make the following statement. If Isaiah Thomas is 100% of Isaiah Thomas, and he doesn't have to be in October. If by sometime in the middle of the season, he's 100% of what he was a year ago, I believe the Cavaliers are even more a lock to win the Eastern Conference than they were yesterday. And I think they have a better chance against Golden State than
we'll
they did
see there.
yesterday.
Crowder helps on the D side because we keep talking about how do you match up with Golden State, and they have to match up more. They had the offense. Isaiah gave offense in Boston. He can give you offense here. LeBron can, and Love can hit his shots as well. Crowder, gives you that, as I said, 3-and-D. He'll shoot the three. He shot a career high, I think 40% from threes last year. Took just under 400, I believe, of them. Shot 300 3-point shots. And then he can play some D on the wing, which is what they need. So that's what they're looking to do. Now, in no way, shape, or form would they be the favorite at all against Golden State. But this is what we do now. This is exactly what we do with moves that are made is how do you match up against Golden State? And with Cleveland, that's all you talk about because that's where they're going to be.
They need another, do they have enough big people? So I just wrote down the names of what will be their primary rotation players. Who am I missing? You got LeBron, you got Kevin Love, you got Jay Crowder, you got Isaiah Thomas. I'm putting Dwayne Wade on this team. I don't know when he'll get there, but he's going to be there. Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith. Oh, they have Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose.
I forgot about Rose.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have Derrick Rose. So they need one more big guy. Is Iman Shumpert still there? I've lost track of who's on which team.
Did you put Zizic in there?
Oh, that's
You got Zizic.
You're right. You're right. He's a big.
Zizic.
They've got.
You got Ante.
They got Ante.
You got AZ. Let's call him AZ.
A through Z.
Let's do that.
They've got the whole alphabet.
They've got
there.
the Croatian AZ.
The Croatian
the
sensation.
big man. Yeah.
Well, you're right. You know what? They're loaded. I mean, the Cavaliers are loaded.
I mean, AZ is destined to be an all-star.
I forgot about Jeff Green. They do. They have half the NBA. Half the NBA is on the Cavaliers. Just name a player you've heard of. He's on the Cavaliers.
The only problem is the other half of the NBA, which is
their roster.
The only problem is the other half of the NBA, which is better, is on Golden State.
You're right. You're right. But they just pulled up the Cavaliers roster in front of me. Quickly count that. How many names is on that list?
8, 10.
20. There are 20 people currently on the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
Richard Jefferson is still there. Oh, I forgot about Kyle Korver. He's still there.
And oh, by the way,
Darren Williams is still there.
You know who is happy right now? Dan Gilbert. He's not writing as big a tax check. The 3 players they got don't even equal what Kyrie makes. So is from the luxury of the tax situation that they have been shelling out. Well, not they. Dan has been shelling out. That won't be as big this year.
The only true center they have, unless Zizic is a center, I know he's a big, the only person who has a C next to his name is Tristan Thompson. He's 6'9".
He says he's 6'9", and AZ is 6'11".
Yeah, Zizic is 6'11".
And he's not, from what I understand, not the most athletic person in the world.
I have to admit to not having studied a lot of tape.
I have not seen a lot of tape. I'm going to go on others on AZ. I am now calling him AZ, by the way.
As far as the trade is concerned, here's the reaction of our Mark Jackson.
If Kyrie Irving was not happy, which we know, and wanted to be traded, which is well documented, well, you could not have gotten a better package. You went and got a guy that can do some of the things that Kyrie does on the offensive end. You went and got a guy that, for a stretch of the season last year was the best closer in the game in the fourth quarter, statistically. So the question, it boils down to this: is the gap between Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie Irving, Jay Crowder, the big fella, and potentially the number 1 pick? I think they're both great players. I don't think the gap is that extreme. So in that aspect, I look and say, well, the Cavs, won the deal, but I think it was a great deal for both teams.
That's one way to not have to pronounce Zizic by calling him the big fella.
But I totally agree with Mark's thinking.
I do as well.
The gap between those two guys is not as wide as Jay Crowder, much less all the rest of the people.
Completely agree.
Look, Isaiah Thomas last year, I get it. He's only 5'9". Isaiah Thomas last year was in the MVP discussion. If you were paying attention to the NBA last year, he deserved to be in the MVP discussion. He did. He was the best player in the fourth quarter in the whole league.
So, but we'll see what he does this year. And then the next discussion is Cleveland giving him the max?
Well, so
next summer he's that, and he says he's a max player. But why wouldn't you say that? So I know. Listen, that's why in this thing there are so many ways to go. A couple of years down the road with Kyrie, this summer for Isaiah. But let's. At some point, let's stick to the beginning of the season and see where this thing goes. And for Kyrie, listen, Kyrie was Batman on a horrible team, and the team went nowhere. Kyrie became Robin and won a championship and has been to the finals, and now he gets to put on the Batman costume again. How's it going to fit? I have no idea.
But he's going to get a chance on a storied franchise, and we'll see how that turns out. We're going to get Jeff Goodman's reaction coming up in just a few moments. He'll tell you how the deal went down. He'll be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You'll hear from Danny Ainge on why he made the deal. And we're asked to put someone in the zone, Mike. That's brought to you by AutoZone. Drive the new Duralast GT brake pads. Proven tough from the tracks to the streets and sold only at AutoZone. Get in the zone with AutoZone. Who's in the zone at times like this? The NBA insiders. So, Woj was working the deal and had all the breaking news last night, and all of our NBA insiders were working it, but no one more than our buddy Brian Windhorst.
Absolutely right.
I'm putting him in the zone. Mm-hmm. You want to read his tweet?
I don't have.
It's right up there on the screen.
Okay, this is from Windy. I'm in Rome. It's 1:30 a.m., and my wife may be considering divorce. I leave analysis of Cavs-Celtics trade to my able colleagues. Good night.
That was from Wendy.
I tweeted to that. I answered that. I said, smart move. Absolutely, positively a smart move. If the wife is going to get a little antsy about that one, you just back off and say, hon, what do you want to do in Rome today?
Yeah, the NBA insider types have had themselves quite a busy summer. This has been one of the best. Listen, I'll say it again. This year, the NBA offseason was the best of their seasons. The postseason was second. The regular season was third.
Sports fans anywhere can earn a nationally recognized degree from Penn State. Online. Whether you're starting or finishing your degree, study where and when it's convenient for you. Choose from more than 125 programs to become a top prospect in your field and advance your career. Learn more at worldcampusinfo.com. Penn State World Campus, a world of possibilities. Online. Visit worldcampusinfo.com today. That's worldcampusinfo.com.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Essery Payne tweets, no one factoring in the possibility Kyrie won't stay in Boston. He might not like Brad Stevens' system. No clear winner.
That's actually what we talked about just about 10 minutes ago.
I would say, and Woj was tweeting about it last night, and we'll get Jeff Goodman on it in a minute. But I have to believe the Celtics have been led to believe that Kyrie is going to stay there long term.
Well, I mean, again, you possibly, just like we're led to believe Paul George is going to end up with the Lakers, so much so that they may get a tampering charge against them, which we probably won't prove, so it won't happen.
Dan Przowski tweets, Celtics got better of the deal. Next year, Paul George may consider Boston for a big three in the East without LeBron. We'll see. And then Only One Pay tweets, I think Cleveland won the trade. Anytime a team receives a draft pick for a player that was going to leave anyway, it's a win.
Just look at the Paul George trade and the Kyrie Irving trade and the difference of what the Pacers got and what the Cavaliers got.
So,
huge.
How did this happen? Let's find out. Jeff Goodman is standing by at the Celtics facility getting ready with our coverage, and he joins us here early on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Jeff, how did this trade take place?
Well, there had been discussions going on for almost a month between the two sides, and it was always Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder, and even Ante Zizic. Those were kind of the three that were in the deal all along. The holdup was what pick it would be, or whether Boston would eventually and ultimately part with Jason Tatum, which Danny Ainge did not. He didn't budge on that. So then the next step was for Cleveland and their young GM, Kobe Altman, trying to pry that Nets pick away from Danny Ainge. And he was able to do it. And now, as I tweeted a little while ago, I heard you guys talking when I was driving in here to the Garden this morning, who's the winner? We're not going to know the answer to that until we see what the Nets pick brings Cleveland, and then how healthy is Isaiah Thomas. But, this is a loaded draft next year, especially in the front court with guys like Marvin Bagley, Michael Porter, DeAndre Ayton, Mo Bamba. And I think if the Cavs can get a Bagley or a Porter at the end of the day, then they put themselves in position to compete now. And if they lose LeBron, which ultimately a lot of people think is going to happen, they have a young cornerstone player to build around going forward.
Is there any concern with Isaiah Thomas's hip injury? They opted for no surgery on the labrum and the hip, and Brad Stevens had already talked about the possibility. Would he be there at the start of training camp? What's the concern there?
I asked Ainge that on the conference call last night, and I said, how much did the hip injury play a part into this trade? He said some. Now, I've been told, according to my sources, it's more than just some. They are concerned. He's turning 29. His game is predicated on speed, making kind of quick moves in and around the basket. So they were worried because he hasn't done anything all off season. They don't know the answer to that. And the interesting part is Cleveland doesn't know the answer to that either. They haven't had one of their doctors examine Isaiah Thomas. They're going purely on the information that they've been given on paper about Isaiah Thomas so far. So nobody can really answer that with certainty. Right now, the Celtics have said all along he doesn't need surgery. Well, that could change depending on how he comes back when he starts to do things. So, it's going to be an interesting deal to watch play out because of Isaiah's health. As I said, the Nets pick, Kyrie, can he be a leader here in Boston? There's been plenty made about Kyrie and immaturity and obviously how he leaves Cleveland. Who doesn't want to play with LeBron, right? I mean, did we ever think we'd hear that? A player, potentially wanting to go away from LeBron James.
Micah, Jeff Goodman, who was there at the Celtics facility, just judging on, and Mike used the best example, which is what Indiana got for Paul George, and just historically what teams get for superstars, who demand to be traded. It feels like Cleveland got a king's ransom. Again, if we were using those as where the bar was set. Why did that happen? Why did Cleveland get so much more for Kyrie Irving than those other teams have gotten for their stars?
Because they had 2 years. They didn't have a lot of leverage. A lot of teams knew that Kyrie was going to be moved. There was no way he was going to go to training camp this year. They were going to make a move before training camp started. However, unlike Paul George, he at least was under contract for at least 2 years with a player option for the third. Paul George was done after this year. So Indiana had to scramble where Kobe Altman, give him credit, early 30s, just took over the GM job. Nobody thought he'd even get the job. He's a Columbia assistant 5 years ago. And you're right. Like, he did very well for himself for Cleveland because if you look at the Cavs this year, you can make a case that they might be better if Isaiah Thomas comes back 100%. You add Jay Crowder, who, listen, he's tough. He can make corner threes. He's a pretty good defender. Zizic was coming along, and then right before Summer League, he had a stomach condition where he lost about 20 pounds, so he didn't look good in Vegas. But the Celtics were very high on him as a young big guy in the rotation. So I'm with you. You hate to kind of cop out and say, hey, it was a great trade for both sides. But I really think it was.
Was this the trade? Was there anything else out there for Cleveland and Kyrie had this not come to fruition?
Well, nobody had the assets. Nobody had the assets to be able to pair an all-star with potentially a top 3 pick. I mean, that's where everybody in Boston was kind of killing Danny Ainge, if you remember, right before they signed Hayward. They killing him. They didn't get Paul George. They didn't get Jimmy Butler. What's he doing? Why is he holding all these picks? He's got to do something. He gets Hayward, much to the credit of Brad Stevens, his former coach. And now they trade, one of those picks for Kyrie. And, oh, by the way, they still have the Lakers pick, 2-5 next year. If it's 2-5, they get the Lakers pick. So you could add a Marvin Bagley, a Michael Porter, a DeAndre Ayton, a Mo Bamba, somebody like that. There's a ton of good bigs in next year's draft loaded at the top. And, again, Bagley and Porter, I think, have a chance to be franchise-changing guys. So, they could still get the number 2 pick.
So the Celtics will go into their future with Kyrie Irving and someone who 2 months ago was in high school. We'll see.
How about it?
We'll see how that turns out. It's Jeff Goodman, who's standing by at the Celtics facility with coverage all morning long for SportsCenter and for us and everybody else. Jeff, thanks for checking in. Great stuff.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Jeff Goodman with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
So let's think about this for a moment moving forward. Next year's draft, as you just heard, Boston could have the Lakers 2-5 pick.
Right.
And the Cleveland Cavaliers have Brooklyn's unprotected pick, and they had 20 wins last year. You could have these two teams meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then both teams having a top 5 pick.
Yeah, they could pick one and two. It's not inconceivable.
Is that
they could meet in the conference final and have
everybody else in the East is going, what the hell is going on?
Yep.
What are we doing here? And then how about this little fun fact for you? Kyrie Irving played at Duke, right?
Yes.
How many games did he play?
Very few.
11.
Okay.
And why?
He got hurt.
Hurt his foot.
Yeah.
You know who he hurt his foot against? Butler and Brad Stevens.
Is that right?
Yes.
That I did not remember.
Yes.
Okay, so he hurt it
Thanks,
again.
Hembo.
That's a good job there by Hembo. Yeah, I did not remember that. He does actually. I can put Kyrie Irving into another trivia. You want to do the trivia question?
Sure,
I was going
go
to say
ahead.
this, but I'll put him in the trivia question. It's another one. So Hembo's been busy this morning with good information. Kyrie Irving will become the 5th player ever to be drafted number 1 overall and ever play for the Celtics in his career. Can you name the other 4 players who were drafted number 1 overall who ever played for the Boston Celtics?
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
All right, give it to me straight, Golick. Did you have any fighting chance at this trivia question?
No.
Kyrie Irving was drafted number 1 overall in the NBA by the Cavaliers, of course. He will now play for the Celtics and thus become the 5th player ever to be drafted number 1 overall and ever play for the Celtics. And as I look at this list of the other 4, and I will admit I would never have gotten this myself, none of them were drafted by the Celtics. None of them were drafted number 1 overall by the Celtics. Now, as far as who they are, I would think you'd get one of them.
One Shaq.
Shaq, correct.
Shaq played for everybody coming to the end.
Right.
So,
He played for the Celtics late in his career. And another one, if you thought about it, you'd get, by the time he got to Boston, he had his last great year with the Celtics. And it's Bill Walton.
Right.
Walton came off the bench on the 86 Celtics, which was the best of those Celtic championship teams with Bird, and Walton was the reason why.
Okay.
Because you had the big 3 in Bird and McHale and Parrish, and then Walton, who when he was at his apex, was as good as anybody ever.
Without question.
So those two, I think I would have gotten. The others, I would not. I had no recollection that Purvis Ellison played for the Celtics, and I had even less recollection that Michael Olowokandi ever played for the Celtics.
We just sat here for a long, long time.
Olowokandi was drafted number 1 overall, of course, by the Clippers. Purvis Ellison, a generation before that, was on the team that beat Jay Billis and Duke.
So did we still not get to the one that we really wouldn't have gotten? Or were those
No, that's it. Those are the 4.
Oh, that's 4.
That's
I thought there was
4
one more.
guys. No, and then Kyrie.
Wow.
So it's Bill Walton, Shaquille O'Neal, Purvis Ellison, Michael Olowokandi, and Kyrie Irving. So I think about the great players, Larry Bird, Bill Russell, on it goes. None of them were drafted number 1 overall. No, the only Celtics who ever played for the Celtics who were drafted number 1 overall were those guys, and the Celtics thus have never had the number 1 overall draft pick, or at least not kept it. So there you have all of that. And Kyrie Irving, they will make that straight talk, wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. I was just reading a string of tweets from Ryan Russillo, who knows basketball as well as anybody, knows the Celtics better than anybody. He loves the deal from the Celtics side. I do too, from this perspective and this perspective alone. They were not going to build their team around Isaiah Thomas long term. No. This trade tells you that, and it makes sense. I love Isaiah Thomas. I love how gutty he is, and obviously what happened with him and his family last year during the playoffs. It was so emotional. This had to be so difficult to do this from everybody's standpoint. But they weren't going to give him $200 million and say, this is the guy we're going to ride with against Kevin Durant and everybody else in the world. So if you had already made that decision, then the fact that they got Kyrie Irving in return is sensational. And then you flip it. If you're the Cavaliers, and you just heard Jeff Goodman a minute ago say they had decided they couldn't bring him to training camp no matter what. They had to make a deal. They were making this deal with their backs against the wall. They got, by those standards, a king's ransom for Kyrie Irving. So I really believe both teams did well.
I guess the way I look at it is Cleveland still in position to win the East every year that LeBron is there? The answer is yes. And then for Boston, this is going to hinge on 2 years, right? Does Kyrie resign? If Kyrie doesn't resign with the Celtics, this will not have been. You won't be able to say this is a positive.
Correct.
Trade.
You wouldn't have traded the number one, what could be the number one overall pick under any circumstances. Now you heard Goodman and others have said that what the Cavs wanted was Jason Tatum, who I believe was the best player in this year's draft. And the Celtics would not part with him. So, in that regard, Boston won. They'd rather give up an unknown. And who knows? Maybe the Nets have a little better the year than we're expecting, and that winds up being the 6th pick and not the 1st pick. And, then all of a sudden it doesn't look quite as bad.
I say think about this again. With the picks that Boston has of LA's 2 to 5 and Cleveland unprotected Brooklyn, they could meet in the Eastern Conference Finals and have the 1st and 2nd pick in the draft potentially and easily in the 2 picks in the top 5. It's crazy.
Scott Evans tweets, I think the Jay Crowder portion of this deal is being understated.
Agreed.
Not by us.
Not by us at all. That's one of the first things we brought up. I love this guy. Again, he'll shoot the 3 and he'll play some D. So, I mean, we keep talking about Isaiah and Kyrie. Do they cancel each other out? I mean, you give me my choice. I'm taking Kyrie. I mean, without question. But you can't deny the numbers that Isaiah Thomas put up, especially in the fourth quarter and what he did. Now, the hip is going to be an issue because we always have to say how healthy is he going to be, or if he is 100%, we have to wait and see. But I'm a Crowder fan of the way he plays.
Me too, and he's going to get better because he's going to play with LeBron James.
And his deal is so good. The contract from the contract side of it.
Correct. Bear in mind, for those of you who didn't hear this, the Celtics traded 3 guys to the Cavaliers, and combined they made less money than Kyrie does. Right. So they actually saved money, and the contract of Crowder is not only cap-friendly, but it's cap-friendly for 3 more years. Mm-hmm. So I think they did remarkably well. And then there's this, and this should make lots of people happy, Golick, especially you. Jim Rosenberg has a good point. If that Nets pick turns out to be number 1 or something really special, LeBron may stay. All this talk about LeBron leaving, if you wind up with the roster that he's going to have with Kevin Love on it and Jay Crowder on it, and let's see what happens with Isaiah Thomas beyond this year. But let's say you add a super stud. I mean, Jeff Goodman knows these guys better than we do.
He's talking about the Bagley kid, the kid we were talking about because he could have been in high school another year, decided to go to Duke for the year, and could be the number 1 pick, and could go to Cleveland.
What's the word? He reassigned. What's the word for what he did? He reclassified himself into this year's college class. Right. Hilarious that you can do that.
It's amazing.
But he decided in August he's going to go to college instead of high school. And now we'll go to the NBA next year, and will the Cavs be able to draft him? So that's going to be, theoretically, a young stud player they're going to have on the cheap for a while. I don't think they're going to keep Isaiah Thomas. But if they have that, if they have those pieces, does it? Let me put it this way. I believe LeBron has already made up his mind he's going to leave. That's what I think, and I base that only on what I hear.
And I'm holding out hope that he doesn't, maybe more with my heart than my head, but I still am looking at the common sense part of this that says he's going to get to the finals every year he's in Cleveland, and why wouldn't he want to do that?
I feel like if I were LeBron, all I can do is put myself in his shoes. If I were in his shoes, I'd be thinking, how do I try and maximize my chances of winning as many championships as I can in whatever years I have remaining at my apex, which maybe he thinks is 5 more.
Right.
Realistically, it's probably more like 3.
Yeah.
So I'd be trying to win titles. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is the best chance he has to do that going forward. So I think it's a great deal. Let's see. We've got the poll question up again. Mm-hmm. Which side got the better of the Kyrie Irving trade? Do you think it was the Cavs? Do you think it was the Celtics? You can cast your vote.
There's no doubt that Zizic put it over the top for me.
You will hear from Danny Ainge coming up on why he made the deal as we continue. Plus, we got Woj later today. Plus, we got some football to get to this morning as well. Jam-packed on a Wednesday. Stay there. Mike and Mike.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's
hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Support comes from Blue Apron. Blue Apron delivers farm-fresh, perfectly portioned ingredients and step-by-step recipes so you can make incredible meals at home. Rediscover how fun cooking can be while reducing food waste and supporting sustainable farms and fisheries. Visit blueapron.com/Mike and Mike to get your first 3 meals free.
Here we are. What a morning. Mike and Mike back in better than ever, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. 1 hour in, and it's been all trade this morning so far as we continue with what has been the summer of the NBA. Their spring was a disappointment. Their regular season was a mess, but their summer has been sensational. Kyrie Irving dealt to the Celtics in a trade for Jay Crowder and Isaiah Thomas, the Brooklyn Nets first pick, which could easily wind up being number 1 overall, and a big man from Croatia whose name we love, Ante Zizic.
And it's amazing. A week from now is the award show. Oh, no, wait.
No, we already did that.
Right. We did have the award
show. We already did do that. Finally, we did that. But so we haven't gotten to other stuff yet today, so let's do a little bit of that for you, and then we'll give you some more reaction. Let's do off the top, which we usually lead the show with, but we'll catch up on a few other things. Mike, Aaron Judge didn't strike out yesterday, which is remarkable, snapping a streak of 37 consecutive games in which he had.
Yeah, he is now tied with a pitcher in Bill Stoneman, who in 71 and 72 did the same thing, struck out in 37 consecutive games. One of the reasons he didn't strike out here, he was walked 3 times. He had a nice eye at the plate. He only swung and missed 1 time in this. I think it's the lowest since the All-Star break.
And did you see Joe Girardi took him out of the game?
Yeah.
Late in the game. He would have had at least 1 more at bat. And Girardi said afterwards, he denied that he did it for that reason. He said he didn't even think of the fact, and he was just trying to, in Joe's words, get him off his feet. Do you believe that? Do you believe that he took him out of the game just so the strikeout streak could end and he wouldn't have to think about it anymore?
I find it hard to believe that wasn't on the mind of Joe Girardi.
They had a big lead at the time, and so anyway, one way or another, he doesn't strike out. Whoever would have thought we'd get to a place in baseball where that would be news? This is definitely news, Mike. UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones has failed a drug test again.
Yeah, he has. This is the 3rd time he's been suspended. 2015, he was suspended 6 months for a hit-and-run arrest. 2016, the year for the failed drug test. Now another failed drug test. So I would imagine if same drug situation, he's going to be gone for at least a year again. As I said, you watch this guy fight. He is pound for pound one of the best fighters I've seen in this sport, yet he just can't keep himself off the drugs and out of trouble. And that's a shame. It's a shame because the guy is going to have a lot of life left. He needs to get that squared away, but man, in the ring, he is something.
Off the top.
Dodgers win again. They beat the Pirates 8-5, but their day was not without some concerns as they continue to win, Mike, despite a mounting injury toll.
Yeah, they really do. First, the win. They're Major League best 15-4 in August. They also had the best record in both June and July. So we know what they're doing, but we know Kershaw has been on the shelf. We know Alex Wood went on the shelf. Cody Bellinger on the shelf, on the DL, both. They've already used the DL 37 times this season. The most in a season since data was first recorded in 1988. The previous record was 34 times the DL was used by the 2012 Red Sox. So, as I said, we talked about this while you were out, Green. They're as favored as the Cubs were going in to the postseason last year, but man, you need the pitching. Kershaw coming back from his situation, Alex Wood going on the DL. We know he'll be back, but that's some big questions for them.
I think I heard Kevin Winter say this morning their magic number is 17. I mean, it's August 23rd, and their magic number is 17.
And you know what? In all honesty, so what? We know they're going to go to the playoffs. We know they're going to have the best record, but will it mean anything if they can't finish this deal?
Don't mean a thing if you don't get the ring. And then, of course, to round off the top, the Cavaliers, we spent the entire first hour on it this morning, trading Kyrie Irving to Boston for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Nets' number 1 pick next year.
So this offseason, Danny Ainge got a couple of All-Stars, Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving. The last time he got 2 players coming off an All-Star season.
I know it.
Do you know it?
Well, I mean, it's
pretty,
unless it's not the obvious one.
No, it's the obvious one. 2007, when he traded for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, 2 moves that culminated in a championship.
Anything is possible. That's Off the Top with Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. They'll compare rates for you, so you get the best deal, even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. Danny Ainge. It's interesting. Danny Ainge is a guy who not long ago was being significantly criticized for having accumulated all of these assets and done nothing with them.
Right.
They didn't get Paul George. They didn't get Jimmy Butler. Well, now all of a sudden, in the span of a boom, it feels like, They get Gordon Hayward, and they get Kyrie Irving. Here he is last night talking about the deal and how difficult parts of it were to make.
It is a high price tag. It is a great value that we're giving up. We love Isaiah and love Jay Crowder, but, acquiring a 25-year-old perennial all-star, a player that, fits a timeline for us and is a fantastic offensive player, is one of the best offensive players in the league. You have to pay a heavy price. We love the guys that were here, and we didn't really want to give up any of those pieces to make this deal work, but we're excited to have Kyrie.
Listen, this is for the future move. You have Kyrie, who's 25, Hayward, who's 27, the youngsters and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. You have Horford, who's 31, but you have still the picks. The Laker pick could be 2 to 5 next year. This is a building team. And I know nobody wants to hear, well, we're basically going to throw in the towel until LeBron is off of Cleveland and out of the East. But I like what Danny Ainge is doing, and I like the position he's in, and I like what he's doing moving forward to take the mantle from Cleveland when LeBron isn't on that team anymore, whether it's after this year or next year or a couple of more years. But the key component here, while they still have some assets, is can they re-sign Kyrie in 2 years?
I also believe firmly that what Danny Ainge cannot say, for obvious reasons, is we had made up our minds we weren't going to keep Isaiah Thomas long term.
Right?
We're not going to give $200 million to a guy who's going to be 30 with a bad hip and he's 5'9".
Right.
I mean, Isaiah Thomas can't do anything about being 5'9".
That's exactly right.
But being 5'9", it does matter. It doesn't make no difference.
And right now, so you could have given him the money, or you have the chance to give a guy who'll be 27 in Kyrie Irving that money in a couple of years. And we'll see where that goes. Now, Kyrie's going to have to want to be there. You have a choice in the matter, so we'll see where it ends up.
Sean Grandy, meanwhile, has been doing Celtics play-by-play for some time, and he was talking about how people are reacting to this. Isaiah Thomas was a beloved player in that organization. Here's the reaction from the Boston side.
I think everyone here is stunned, and it's a real head versus heart thing right now in Boston because of the attachment beyond just what a great player Isaiah is and what he did this last year. The emotional attachment that Boston attaches to its favorite athletes was real, it was deep, and it was built to last, and this rips that away.
Let's understand again what he did in the regular season, especially in the fourth quarter, then getting to the post, losing his sister in the car accident. Yeah. I mean, let's not forget that, and the emotional toll that took and what he went through with that. And then the injury as well, that's the heart. And I get it. You can be beloved, but the head says, not paying that guy $200 million. And now we don't have to worry about doing that. And Kyrie's a guy we will pay $200 and some million if he's going to stay here in a couple of years.
Kyrie is younger, and
I would take him. Listen, is there?
I was about to say better. Are you comfortable saying Kyrie Irving is a better player than Isaiah Thomas?
The only way I can put it is if you give me the choice of those two players and $200 million or $10, who I'm taking Kyrie.
Me too.
I'm taking Kyrie.
Me too. And it's exclusively because Isaiah Thomas is 5'9".
And again, he can do nothing about that. But you know what? This is a business, and you have to look at these things. Is it head and shoulders above Isaiah Thomas? No, I get it. I understand that. But you give me that choice, I'm taking Kyrie. And he's younger. And Kyrie has gone through some injury situations. But plus, this hip is hanging out there on Isaiah Thomas as well. No surgery. Let's see how he comes back from it.
What did the Bulls remind me? How many spots the Bulls moved up in the first round in the Jimmy Butler trade? Can someone remind me of that? Did they move up 8 spots, 9 spots, something like that? How are you feeling if you're waking up this morning in Chicago? You traded Jimmy Butler, who still had time left on his deal.
Yep.
And is every bit the superstar caliber player that Kyrie Irving is. He's not the scorer Kyrie is, but he's probably all around. If he's not as good a player as Kyrie, he's darn close. You moved up 9 spots in the draft to get it, and that's what you got for basically what you got for Jimmy Butler. And Paul George, I didn't want to talk about.
No.
George only had 1 year left on his deal.
So there's a difference there. But then you look at what Cleveland got.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you say the Cavaliers are extraordinary winners in this. I understand that the Bulls also got a couple of players, but they're not players anywhere. They're not players. Would you rather have Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, or Jay Crowder?
I like Jay Crowder.
Me too. I mean, Levine and Dunn had a terrible first year. Levine has a terrible injury.
Right, he does. What an athlete.
Let's see what they. Yeah, wow. They could wind up being great. They could wind up being better players. They're a roll of the dice, and you moved up 9 spots for Jimmy Butler. Paul George, I don't want to talk about. And so, to me, the Cavaliers come out of this enormous winners.
Yeah,
enormous winners.
Just when you put it against the backdrop of what others have gotten for great players.
Yeah, they got Victor Oladipo and Arvydas Sabonis' son.
Right.
I mean, that's who they got for
his son.
It is his son.
I know his son, but just the way you're
and I don't remember his first name.
Yeah.
He's the kid from Gonzaga, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, that's who they got for Paul George. Now, again, that was only 1 year, and so that's different. But come on. I mean, that's comparatively speaking. I thought that Cleveland was going to get fleeced, which is why I thought Cleveland was going to hang on to Kyrie and force his hand.
Which, again, goes back to how much was this Danny Ainge not wanting to go through, do I give Isaiah Thomas all that money? And if I don't, what's that going to look like? Because he's beloved here in Boston.
I think
I have a way out of this.
It's a double win.
It's a way out of this, and I get Kyrie Irving back. And I know I need to sign him in a couple of years, but I got a couple of years.
The Cavaliers have 20 players currently on their roster, and you know every one of their names. That's now that you know Ante Zizic.
Yeah,
they know that you know the name of every player on that team. They're going to have to pare it down at some point.
You think?
to a reasonable rotation, but they're going to be. I was about to say they're going to be good. They obviously were already good.
They're going to represent the East.
Sure.
And then the only question is do they have the firepower offensively and then defensively to go against Golden State?
Are you putting Dwayne Wade on that team? Are you comfortable putting Wade on that team?
I would be comfortable saying he's going to be a piece of that puzzle.
So are we counting Isaiah Thomas as healthy? If Isaiah Thomas is healthy, then he's the starter ahead of Derrick Rose.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you've got Rose coming off your bench. I'm just writing down names, Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love. So you're starting five. You're starting five at whatever point it is they get Dwayne Wade is LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Isaiah Thomas, Tristan Thompson, and Kevin Love. Coming off your bench, you would have Derrick Rose. You'd have J.R. Smith.
Crowder.
You'll have I forgot about Crowder. Yeah. And you'll have Zizic. So Zizic is like a piece that people like. He's a big who can be in the rotation. So that's and we haven't even mentioned a bunch of other guys who were still on that team.
Kyle Korver, did you mention him?
No, I didn't.
Shooter just coming off the bench.
So I mean, they probably will have to trade some of these guys. But one way or another, they are loaded. I mean, they are going into this thing, I think, better suited to give a run to the Golden State Warriors if Isaiah Thomas is healthy and they get Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, which is exactly what their job needs to be right now while LeBron's on the team.
All right, let's see what happens. Mike and Mike, baseball season's rolling along, and we've got action for you tonight. Astros and Nationals presented by Indeed.com. Coverage begins 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on the ESPN app. All right, we will be mostly covering this trade for you this morning because obviously that's the huge story. There were a couple of other things out there that we wanted you to hear. I'd like to hear the soundbite. Do we have the Eric Winston soundbite, guys? I don't see it up on my screen. So I can never mind. I do see it. It's on a different line. So Eric Winston is the president of the NFL Players Association. And we understand that we are all in take to the mattresses, tough talk kind of mode, which is just a delight. Who doesn't want that 4 years before a collective bargaining agreement ends, is to hear the league and the Players Association yelling and screaming about a work stoppage that at soonest is 4 years away. This is exactly what fans want when a season begins. But anyway, whatever. So Eric Winston, whom we've had on many times.
Yes, we have.
And I generally like. I think his heart is in the right place. He has a tendency sometimes, I think, to choose his words in ways that I think works against him. I don't think that he's making the point he thinks he's making. So let's hear this. I'll be curious to get your point or your perspective on this because I've read the comments. I haven't heard them. So I want to hear the tone.
You read them for face value and you're going to get the impression I think you're getting and a lot of people are getting.
Let's hear what Eric Winston, NFLPA president, said about the future of the NFL.
Honestly, I don't care, and I don't think the guys in this locker room care whether this thing's going to be around in 20 years because none of us are going to be playing. So do these guys want to own for a long time, then they can own for a long time, but another work stoppage might kill the golden goose. This thing dies out in 20 years, it dies out in 20 years, but that's not really my concern, and I don't think it's any of these players' concern in here either.
So you hear that, and you initially think, I think what you think, and a lot of people do, is, oh, this guy just cares about the now. He doesn't care about later, the future of the game, the future players of the game, and the union is supposed to be fighting for the players now and trying to lay groundwork for the players in the future. That's always the thought process. And so I understand when you say sometimes you choose your words wrong, and I understand because he actually put out either on Instagram or Twitter kind of a clarification of what he meant. And basically, he was putting the onus on the owners, saying, listen, we're going to be done playing. You want to keep owning for decades, you're going to be dealing with this issue, you're going to go on strike again, or you're going to have a lockout again, you're going to kill this golden goose. Not going to affect me or the guys right now because we'll be out of the league by then. So I get what he was saying. It wasn't as cut and dry with, well, I don't give a damn what happens later on, I'll be gone. It wasn't that way, but I can, in this day and age of headline, wow, look at that headline, and then don't read any further into it, I can see how people would say, wait a minute, how can he say something like that? But I understand his deeper meaning to that.
And listen, and there's the news now that D. Smith may not even be in charge of the union.
I'll go address that. So, Roger Goodell is going to sign that extension. We talked about this when you were gone. He was going to go to 2019, a 5-year extension. One of the things about that is he's now going to be the commissioner during the CBA. It's after the 2020 season. So you're talking the off season in 2021 is when they'll be negotiating the CBA. Now we know the one power person will be in place. DeMaurice Smith, he was started to be the running the union in 2009, and he's had to win an election every 3 years. The last election, a lot of people thought Troy Vincent was going to unseat him in 2015. There's another election in March of after this season, 2018, and then there'll be another one in March of 2021, which will be right when negotiations are going on. And there is a gentleman named Cyrus Mary, who is a civil rights lawyer who actually teamed up with Johnny Cochran years ago and really jumped on the NFL about minorities and head coaches. So right after that, the Rooney Rule. So he was instrumental in that. He's won big cases against big companies, and he now wants to challenge DeMaurice Smith. Again, this is months away, this election, months away. And he says in the last negotiation that DeMaurice Smith was part of, the players went backward economically. They gave Roger Goodell a blank check on power. So he wants to run against DeMaurice Smith. So that's kind of weighing as well on the union of who will be leading the union going into this because it's so far away. So that's the specific there. My thought overall on this, Greenie, is I don't care about any of the talk. Any of the tough. I heard people say this is some of the toughest talk we've heard out of the union. Doesn't matter. Because you know what? In 1987, you know what we did? We not only talked tough, we walked out. We walked out in 1987. We left a wildcat strike. We left. We thought we weren't going to leave the owners. We were going to leave them in a lurch. So they get replacement players. Everybody mocks it, has a good time with it. I'm holding a sign. I'm making $90,000 a year, throwing stones at the replacement buses when the players are coming in, holding up my sign, being my good union guy. And what happens? All the rich guys in the league cross the picket line. So that was our way of where's our unity and let's stay together and let's fight together. You know what? You can talk all you want. And I hope that the players get a way better deal than this time. But I don't want to hear the talk. I don't want to hear the tough talk because it doesn't mean a damn thing until you get to where you need to get to. Everybody, they need to have a plan going into this. And then if you really are stuck on or you really have those things in mind that you want to get done, then the next thing is the resolve. And you know what talk means then? Nothing. Means nothing. Talk from both sides. I don't want to hear talk from either side. I'm so disheartened with the union and with the league and their inability, especially the main guys, to get along. You got a $14 billion business that you can't seem to figure out to get everybody on the same page. So I don't want to hear the talk. I don't want to hear Eric Winston with the tough talk. I like Eric Winston a lot, but I don't want to hear it. Who knows what he'll even be doing in 2020, 2021. But he's a smart guy, and he could be part of the solution here, but I don't need to hear that talk, and I don't need to hear the talk from the NFL either. I need to see action, because at the end of the day, you can talk all you want, but when your back's pressed against the wall and a player now has to miss a game check, then you're going to find out the resolve of just how strong you are and how strong your leadership is. Until then, I don't want to hear it. Why not? They should be working on bettering the relationship like Adam Silver and Michelle Roberts instead of damning one another until we get to it, so every word they say, they can parse it, hate on one another, and then nobody gets football. So I'm just tired of the whole thing. Sorry for the rant, but it just aggravates me.
You said it better than I could have, so I will not add to it. I have a few other thoughts that actually are on that's the root of it. What you just said is 100% right.
And again,
I have some that would be branches.
I like Eric Winston. I think he could be part of the solution here, but the tough talk on both sides, it needs to end because it means zip.
We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Let's update the poll quickly here and take a look and see where you're going. I have it up on my Twitter page at ESPN Greeny. Which side do you believe got the better of the Kyrie Irving trade? Right now, I've got almost 9,000 votes and 2 hours left to vote. 56% say they think Cleveland did. 44% say they think Boston did.
I would pick that as well, but it's a tough question. It's actually a simple question, but it's not a simple answer. So I answered it in the now. And in the now, I say Cleveland, but in the future, it could very well be Boston. Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
All right, we are Mike and Mike. Our check of SportsCenter headlines begin with the deal done. Cavaliers trade Kyrie Irving to the Celtics for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Nets' first-round pick in 2018. Feels, at least to this point, to both of us, like a trade that could well benefit both sides. Cavs did very well for a player everyone knew they needed to deal. Celtics, we think, didn't want to commit long-term to Isaiah Thomas. They get Kyrie Irving. John Jones failed a drug test prior to UFC 214, says Dana White. It's the second positive test of Jones' career. And congratulations, Albert Pujols. He hit the 610th home run of his career in a 10-1 win over the Rangers. And SportsCenter with Mike and Mike is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless.
Other wireless providers say they're going to cut your bill in half, but who knows what kind of coverage you're going to get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get nationwide coverage on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks, and their no-contract unlimited plans, only $45 a month.
All right, a lot of Twitter reaction to Golick's thoughts on the player union issue in the National Football League. We'll get back to that. We're going to have Bill O'Brien, head coach of the Texans, coming up in just a minute or two for you here. But first and foremost, all this reaction to the big NBA trade. Tremaine tweets at us, Kyrie is better than everyone involved. That first-round draft pick could come back to bite them. By them, of course, he means Boston. We had Jeff Goodman on saying that next year's draft is projected to be absolutely loaded. Golick has made the point all morning long. The Celtics and Cavaliers could wind up meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals again next year, and then they could, right after that, have the first and second picks in the draft.
Which everybody else in the East is just collectively throw up their hands and go find a cliff.
Bradley Walsh tweets at us, are you guys taking into consideration that Isaiah flourished under Brad Stevens' offensive genius? Maybe it won't be that in Cleveland.
Well, you don't know. You're exactly right. Whatever sport you're in, if you take a player who was successful, put him on another team in a different system, you're not sure what you're going to get until that player gets there.
And obviously the flip side of that is, will Isaiah Thomas actually be even more impactful offensively with LeBron James on his team, who generally has made everybody better offensively throughout his career? And then quickly, before we bring in the coach, there's another one here that brings up the question of, does Isaiah Thomas have to pass a physical? I mean, everyone knows he's hurt, right? They know about the hip. They know where he is.
Right.
The Cavaliers obviously know that. Would you assume their doctors have had a chance to see him? They see the medical. How does something like that work?
I don't know. Normally, when you do a trade, the person has to pass a physical, but you do know this injury, so I don't know what else was talked about. That's way above my pay grade.
I'd be curious to see if there was somewhere a little note in how that worked out. What is it the Cavaliers what were they allowed to know? Do they have just doctors' reports
medical
from
records,
Boston?
Whatever that may be.
We'll find out. All right, one way or another, that is the big story in sports this morning, but there's so much going on out there, and let's turn our attention to a little football here. One of the teams that we've had our eye on throughout this preseason because of an interesting quarterback battle has been the Houston Texans, and their coach Bill O'Brien joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coach, good morning. How are you today?
Morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great.
Well, Coach.
Obviously, you've got a couple of quarterbacks there in camp that everyone is watching. Savage, who you've had in the system for a while, and Deshaun Watson. And there's been a lot of early praise for him. I certainly have been very impressed with what I've seen from him. Can you give us your view from where you sit on where they stand right now, a couple of weeks before the season begins?
Sure. Tom's had a really strong camp. He's, like you said, he's been in our system for 4 years. He has really good command of what we're trying to do, the type of tempo we want to run, changing plays at the line of scrimmage, protection calls. He's been around for a little bit, and he has a really good understanding of what we're doing, and he's playing well. He's executing well. I think he's only thrown 3 incompletions in 2 preseason games, which, that's pretty good. And so then you have Deshaun, who's come in here and really done a good job of picking up this offense very quickly. He's been able to come in here and improve every single day, especially mentally. That's one of the biggest things. He's been able to learn. Let's just say he makes a mistake one day, the very next day, or even sooner than that in a meeting, he'll understand right away what the mistake was, and he'll improve on that the next day. So he's gone out and played pretty well himself. So. I really like the room that we have. We have Brandon Whedon at number 3, and he's a great guy and a fun guy to coach, and we've got a really good situation here.
Yeah, listen, I think so. Before the draft, I had said I think Deshaun Watson's the best quarterback coming out of this draft, and we'll see if and when it comes to fruition in Houston. But with Savage being the starter, and I know your top receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, gave Savage public praise, saying he's the guy, should be the guy, and talking about him. I'm curious, when Hopkins does that publicly, had he talked to you? Do you have discussions with the receivers and other offensive guys about it? I know it's your decision, but how often is that decision talked about with the other players, like DeAndre talked about it publicly?
Yeah, I haven't really talked to the other players about it. I think what DeAndre's seeing is what we've seen in practice for the last few years. Basically Tom has had an unlucky 3 years. He's been injured quite a bit. He was injured his rookie year. He was injured the next year. He was injured at the end of last year. And, that's going to be a big key for Tom is staying healthy. But when he's been out there, he throws the ball very accurately. He throws it on time. He like I said, he has a really good grasp of our offense. He throws a catchable ball. And the thing about the young guy, Deshaun, is he has a lot of the same qualities. They have different skill sets, but Deshaun throws a very accurate ball, and it's been a good camp because the ball has been placed in the right spot, and I think that helps your team, Mike. You know what I mean? Like when you have some quarterbacks back there that can throw the ball accurately. I think that helps everybody compete a little bit better.
Completely agree. And accurately doesn't just mean completion. It means throwing your guy open, letting him get yards after the catch.
Right.
I completely get what you're saying. We're talking to Bill O'Brien, head coach of the Texans. Another shift we're kind of seeing, Coach, is the starters a lot of times playing less in these preseason games and more of teams getting together to practice during the week before the preseason game. So I've been trying to explain it on air, but obviously we'd much rather hear it from you of just how big those benefits are of having a few days of practice. You guys have done it with the Patriots this year, how that's becoming a bigger and bigger thing and the benefits from that.
Yeah, I can't tell you enough how much I believe in the joint practices. Last week when we were in West Virginia, the Patriots came and we had a good 2 days with them. And it was good because, our practice schedules are pretty similar. So it was a pretty seamless transition to going from practicing against each other to practicing against them. And we, Coach Belichick and I decided let's just have a really good 2 fundamental days, 2 days of good fundamental, tough, hard-nosed football. It was clean. Both teams, I think, have a real healthy respect for each other. I know both coaching staffs do, and it was a good 2 days. And now Today we practiced this morning, and then we're leaving this afternoon, and we're going to go basically do the same thing against the Saints. We did it last year with Sean Payton, and it was awesome. I mean, I can't say enough about it. In fact, I was talking to a couple of retired coaches over the summer, and it's been going on for a while, and I think, to me, it's really a good way to improve your team. It breaks up the monotony of camp. It also brings your team together. Your team is, you're rooting for the other side of the ball to do well, which is different than when you're going against each other. It's a little bit different. So I just think it's a great way to improve your team.
Mike and Bill O'Brien, coach of the Texans. How would you compare the work you get there to the work the players get in preseason games? Because one wonders, with the commissioner talking about potentially shortening the preseason, could this be something that could lead to? Could you deal with one fewer or even two fewer preseason games if you're getting more of this kind of work?
Absolutely. This is just one man's opinion. If I had, one vote, I would vote for more joint practices. I think in the preseason, I think, one of the things that we all, basically you're trying to get your team down to a 53-man roster, and it takes about 6 weeks to kind of figure that out. But it's basically, maybe let's just say you have player 1 through 20 that you kind of know are going to be on your team, and then it's who are player 21 through 53. And the preseason games are good opportunities for those guys. But player 1 through 20, you've got to make sure that those guys are healthy. You want everybody healthy. I'm not saying that you want everybody to be healthy for the beginning of the season, but you have to make sure that your top players are healthy. And these joint practices, the scrimmages are not live. It's more of a thud-type practice, and it's a really good way to improve your team and keep everybody healthy.
Bill O'Brien, Houston Texans head coach, joining us here. As far as you deal with injuries, you already lost a Fuller for a bit with, I believe it was a collarbone. J.J. Watt missed time last year with his back. And Coach, I know injuries. You get a knee, it's X amount of time. You get an elbow, it's X amount of time. An ankle, the same thing. A back, they say it's X amount of time, but we all know the back is such a tricky thing. So how do you deal with that, of the medical side saying he's good to go? Of course, he wants to play and be out there going, as to, man, we really got to make sure this thing stays healthy the entire season.
It's really a two-way street, and I give JJ a lot of credit, meaning, we approached JJ and not just me, but our medical staff, and, we talked to him about, look, this is how we're going to basically have you on somewhat of a pitch count. And as you guys know, with JJ Watt, this guy always wants to be on the field. He wants to be out there practicing. He's just got that type of motor. He wants to be in the fray all the time. And so coming into this season, he agreed. This is something that I have to do. You'll have to talk to him about his off-season regimen, but I know that he's changed that a little bit relative to what he did when he was a little bit younger, pre-back surgery. And the guy's playing really well, Mike. I mean, this guy is playing really at a high level. It's almost impossible to move the ball in practice when he's in there, So I tell Anthony Weaver, our D-line coach, I tell him, look, it's like 2 or 3 reps and get him out so we can try to get a first down here. You know what I mean? It's the guy's playing at a high level. We've got a good defense. We have a great bunch of guys on that side of the ball, and it's been really a good, strong camp because I think we're getting better offensively, and I think our guys are really competing hard against each other.
It's funny, they left me in practice to give the offense confidence. It's just, I guess it's the other side of the play.
Good luck, Coach. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, guys, thanks.
Take care. Bill O'Brien, one of 6 coaches in the league to win at least 9 games each of the last 3 seasons. He's the only one to do it with a different quarterback each year. I didn't ask the first question well. I was really trying to ask a question about Deshaun Watson. I was trying to ask it without asking, what do you need to see in order for Watson to become the starter? I did a very poor job of asking that question. But one way or another, I like what I saw from Watson. I do believe ultimately he's going to be the starter there. It's just a question of when.
Agree.
And I asked that question poorly. But one way or another, you got Watt. You got Watt who is coming back. And look, that division went from being a joke to being really good.
It really did, and you have so many people that do these polls that say the 2 best pass rushers on a team are Clowney and Watt. and so they have the pass rushers there. We know the talent they have on offense, but we see what Tennessee is doing as well. That's an interesting division to keep an eye on.
Really busy morning again. We have another head coach coming up today, Dirk Cutter from the Bucs. We got Woj on the big trade. Much more basketball as we continue. Kyrie Irving has been dealt to Boston, and your reaction after this word from Ultimate Software. In sports, every player on the team is valuable, and the same should be said of your business.
Find the MVPs in your organization with Ultimate Software, the HR payroll and talent management solution that gives you total visibility into your people. Ultimate's full suite of software offers insight that makes recruiting smarter, retention more strategic, and ensures top performers are rewarded, because no matter what business you're in the people business. Learn more at ultimatesoftware.com. Ultimate Software, people first. We're back after this on Mike and Mike.
Sports fans anywhere can earn a nationally recognized degree from Penn State online. Whether you're starting or finishing your degree, study where and when it's convenient for you. Choose from more than 125 programs to become a top prospect in your field and advance your career. Learn more at worldcampusinfo.com. Penn State World Campus, a world of possibilities, online. Visit worldcampusinfo.com today. That's worldcampusinfo.com.
You might have seen in reaction to the Cavaliers trading away Kyrie Irving, LeBron James had a very classy tweet because, I thought actually everything about this tweet was genius. So one of these Cavaliers fans puts a jersey, a Kyrie Irving jersey, on the ground and says, all right, fans, you know what to do. And everyone assumes he's going to set fire to it, the way they did with the LeBron jerseys. And he just places a note on it that says, thank you.
Right.
And LeBron James retweeted that and said that's exactly the way to react, that everyone should treat him. Quote, that's the only way to be to the kid. Special talent guy, nothing but respect, and what a ride it was our 3 years together.
So, okay, you say that, but when he comes back for game 1 to Cleveland, what happens?
That's going to be my question to you. October 17th, NBA's opening night. It will be Boston at Cleveland. It'll be Kyrie Irving wearing, I don't know what number he'll wear in Boston, but it won't be 2 because 2 is retired for Red Auerbach. So whatever number Kyrie Irving is wearing in a Celtics green jersey, he'll be wearing that in Cleveland. What do you believe the reaction will be?
Did he leave by force, or did he want to leave?
He wanted to leave.
He's going to get booed.
It won't be anything like LeBron's first game back, though, right?
No. It will not, but fans are going to – he wanted out. He was on we're in the NBA Finals team years and years in a row, won a title, and he wanted out because he wanted to be the man. And listen, that's his right to ask for that, and Cleveland obliged it by trading him, but he wanted to leave. So while that was a nice note on the jersey, and I get it, I think when that first night comes about and Kyrie comes back in to the arena in Cleveland, I think fans are going to understand. You want it out. Okay, you want it out. Here you go. And he's going to get booed.
I agree. Here's what I would ask you. What do you believe is the answer to the question that we will never know? Someday maybe Kyrie Irving will write a book about his life and his career and his autobiography. He'll give you the true reason. But do you believe the true reason that he wanted out of Cleveland was that he just wanted to be the man on a team?
I don't know.
Because that just doesn't feel right to me. It never has.
I honestly don't know. In an era where guys are teaming up, he seemed to want to get away from the team up. But so I don't know.
I feel like it's more than that.
I don't know. Is there a relationship? I don't know. And I certainly, that's not something I want to speculate on because I'm not there. And you're talking about relationships and whether it's professional relationships or personal relationships. I have no idea.
I'll do it. I'll speculate.
You go ahead.
Here's my speculation. I believe that Kyrie didn't want to be the last man standing on a terrible team, which I think prior to yesterday, they were going to become. If LeBron James does leave a year from now, he was going to be the man on an awful team.
Right. Because he already was that.
He didn't. Yeah, he knows what that's like. And I think he has less faith in the leadership of the Cavaliers than he does in Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens. Now, based upon yesterday, I have more faith in the leadership of the Cavaliers. Kobe Altman, whose name no one had ever heard a month ago when he became by default the general manager of the Cavaliers. He did because they fired their current guy 3 days before the draft and then couldn't get Chauncey Billups to take the job. So Kobe Altman becomes the GM basically by default, and he makes, in my opinion, a sensational trade yesterday.
He did.
So all based on that alone, I actually have more confidence in their front office than I did prior to that. Having said that, I believe that's the reason, that Kyrie wanted to get out while the getting was good, because once LeBron leaves, it's going to be last guy in the room, turn the lights off, and he didn't want to be that guy.
And if that's his thought process, I mean, you can yell at it, you can fault it, or you can say, listen, it's his basketball career. He has already seen the dark side when he's the leader of that team, and it's not a good team. And if he didn't want to go back to that, so be it. You know, that then if you can understand it or you cannot understand it, you know, you can all have your opinion about it. But if that were the reason, you know, you could see the reasoning behind it, right? Saying, okay, this is going to go back to a bad team and I don't want to be that, so I'm going to get somewhere else. So we'll see. We'll see how it all works out.
What is the core? Now, if in theory Kyrie Irving is going to be at the center of the of the Celtics going forward, the core with which they hope to win their next championship will be Kyrie Irving,
Hayward,
Gordon Hayward,
Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum.
And whoever they get with the Lakers pick next year?
Oh, that. I mean, your core doesn't have to be 5. Your core could be 3. Your core could be 2. Your core could be 4.
Right.
That's the 4 right now. That's a 4 known. Al Horford, again, is 31 years old. So we're talking